Welcome back to Let's Make a Game, a channel about making computer role-playing games using the free program Twine and the Sugarcube format for Twine. In this video, I would like to continue talking about my current project of coding the combat system for a viewer's game. More specifically, I would like to talk about spray attacks, which is a new type of attack which some weapons can do, which I have coded. So as you can see, I've set up a combat here. It's a little bit hard to see, but on my little character sheet bit, you can see that I've got a flamethrower, and I have made this new type of attack. Not very successfully, but I've had sort of 3 attacks in one go. You can see here that it says the attack uses 3 ammunition, and then I have a roll which failed, and then I have another roll which failed, and then I wasted ammunition, which is a sort of special characteristic of the spray attack. So that particular one wasn't very successful, but obviously if I'd hit 3 times, well, you know, it would have been very successful, albeit at the cost of sort of quite a lot of ammunition in one go. But that's what it does. So as usual, I'm going to spend the rest of the video showing you the code that allows that to happen. So there's quite a lot of stuff that needs to happen. Let's just zoom in a bit before we do anything else. There was already something called a burst attack, which the machine gun specifically could do. And how that worked is it used up 1 to 6 ammunition each attack, but if it hit, the damage was multiplied by the amount of ammunition it used. That isn't what the person whose game this is going to be wants anymore. Well, I'm not sure if they've sort of changed their mind or if I sort of misunderstood what the instructions they gave me, but either way, that's not what they want anyway. So I've sort of replaced that. So we already have the attribute burst. Sorry, I keep saying attribute when I mean variable. So I'm sorry about that. We already have burst, which is the amount of ammunition that's used in a spray attack. So we're still using that. We have another one called burst range, and we need that to keep track of which range band we are targeting, because the way that spray attacks work is you randomly attack an enemy in a particular range band, and burst range keeps track of which range band it is. And of course, we also need to have some way of knowing which weapons can make these attacks. And again, we use an existing slot, which is WEA_ATT, which of course stands for weapon attack. Z3, that keeps track of whether the attack uses ammunition or it's a throwing attack or it's a striking attack. Or the one that we want, it's a spray attack. Previously, it was only the machine gun that could do these. Now we have the assault rifle, which is sort of the replacement for the machine gun. It's just the machine gun under a different name, I guess. And there's a couple of flamethrowers as well. There's the shoddy flamethrower, and then there's a sort of just a flamethrower. And all of those they actually all have a sort of normal attack that only uses 1 ammunition, but they also have this spray attack. And that's indicated by, in slot 3, we have the number 3. So, because both companions and player characters can make these attacks, I had to change player chooses target, which is the passage where what you'd think happens. The player chooses the target, and also companion target, which is the equivalent for companions. Because when you make a spray attack, you don't go to PC side attacks immediately. That's the place where attacks normally take place. But when you make a spray attack, we have to go to this special page called spray attack, or passage called spray attack. In fact, we have to go through a sequence of 3. Spray attack, find burst target, and find burst target 2. And then eventually we go to PC side attacks. So we had to make a slight change to player chooses target. First of all, I'll show you. So this is a page, I've already talked about this passage, so I won't talk about it in great detail, but basically it writes a button into text, or it writes a table into text, which gives you all of the targets that you can choose for a particular attack. And for a normal attack, it creates a button for each particular target, for each enemy, which if you press it, sends you to PC side attacks. But all we do is if WEA_ATT_X3 equals 3, in other words, if we're dealing with this special sort of spray attack, we have pretty much the identical button, except that it sends you to the passage spray attack. For the companions, of course, the player doesn't choose who they target. It's the program. But we do something similar. Once the computer's randomly chosen a target, we say if WEA_ATTX3 equals 3, then give the message companion INI_who, which is just the number of the companion. So companion 1 chooses a spray attack, and we go to spray attack. And if not, if it's a normal attack, we just give the message that we were giving before, which is companion INI_2 attacks enemy Z, and we go to PC side attacks. So if we have a spray attack, we'll go to this passage spray attack. So what happens there? Well, first of all, we have to work out what burst is, and it's done randomly. The way we work it out is we simulate rolling a die, and that's how much ammunition we're going to use up. But of course, you can't use up more ammunition than you have. So if the number is higher than the amount of ammunition you have, it's capped at the amount of ammunition you have. And the way we do that is we use math.min, which means the smallest of whatever's in the list, or in this case, the smaller, because there's 2 terms. And the 2 terms are ammo, INI_who, so the ammunition in the main hand of the acting character, or a random number from 1 to 6. So for example, if the random number from 1 to 6 was 4 and you had 3 ammunition, it would be set to 3 rather than 4. Then we say the attack uses $burst ammunition. Then we set this burst range. That's the range band that we're targeting. We set that to enemy Z3, which is just the distance for the distance that the chosen target is at. And then we go to find burst target, because the way spray attacks work is it's a randomly chosen enemy in the particular range. So let's say enemies 3, 4, and 5 are in the same range band, and the player character is acting, and you choose to do a spray attack. Clicking enemy 3, enemy 4, and enemy 5 isn't going to make any difference in this particular case, because it's just going to specify that it's that group that you're attacking, because a spray attack is sort of imprecise. You're shooting at a group rather than an individual. So we find burst target. Now, first we need to check that at least one enemy is at the desired range. There might not be, because player might have killed them. So the first time we come here, of course, there is going to be an enemy at that desired range, because the desired range is burst range, and we've set it to be the distance that the enemy that's chosen is at. But let's say you kill them with your first attack, and there aren't any other enemies in that space. Well, now there aren't any enemies at the desired range, and so their burst attack ends. So we have to check that that's the case, because otherwise the computer would be looking for an enemy that isn't there, and you'd get into an infinite loop. The system would sort of freeze up, essentially. So we set Y2 to 0. We're going to set it to 1 if we find at least one enemy. We have a for loop that goes from 1 to enemy_max. That's just the maximum number of enemies. And if we get an enemy whose hit points are over 0, in other words, an enemy that's alive, enemy something 2 gives the hit points for that particular enemy. Enemy, of course, stands for enemy, and it gives a lot of the different attributes of the enemies. So if enemy Z22 is greater than 0 and enemy Z23, which is their position, is equal to burst range, then we've found a valid target and we set Y2 to 1. Now, then we ask, is Y2 equal to 1? If it is, yep, we go to find burst target 2. That's where we're going to choose who gets attacked. Else, meaning we haven't found any enemies in that range, meaning that the burst attackers have sort of already killed them, the spray attackers already killed them. Well, then we reduce the acting character's ammunition by burst. So minus equals means that the new value of the attribute, sorry, of the variable, I've done it again, equals the old value minus whatever's on the right-hand side here. And in this case, it's $burst. $burst is going to be reduced as we make attacks. So this is just saying if you've got any sort of spare ammunition, you still waste it, you still use it up. That's one of the disadvantages of this type of attack. So we reduce the ammunition by any sort of leftover ammunition in burst. Then we set burst to 0 because we don't want this variable sort of carrying over into the next combat and the computer going, oh, burst is over 0. There must be a spray attack going on. But in fact, there isn't. It's just that there was some value left in it from the last time. We want to sort of reset everything for the next combat. So that's why we set burst equal to 0 and we go to next action. But usually we'll be going here because usually we will find a target. So what happens there? Well, we're just going to randomly choose a target. We set Z to be a random number from 1 to enemy underscore max. And then we ask something very similar to what we asked over here. Have we found an enemy whose hit points are greater than 0 and whose position is burst range? If so, we go to PC side attacks. So now we finally go to PC side attacks. If we don't, well, we've picked the wrong one, but we know if we got here, we know that there is one to find. So we include burst target 2. See, this is why we needed to make sure there was an enemy to find, because if there wasn't and we came here, we'd just be going through this page over and over until the system crashed. But let's say we have found a target. Now Z is the, in PC side attacks, $Z is the number of the enemy that is attacked. So we go to PC side attacks. There's a lot that happens in PC side attacks, but we've talked about most of it. There's just a note here that says that Z is our target. And there's the only difference here is that we previously had some code for the old way that spray attacks worked, which is work out burst, and then if reduce ammo by burst rather than by 1, and if there's a hit, multiply the damage by burst as well. So we've eliminated that that code, but otherwise this just works exactly the same. Where we have, and by the way, sorry, this is just a side note, but I think I said in my last video that I wanted to fix the science gun special effect, which was that if you hit an enemy with a science gun, they have to roll to avoid shock. And I said, oh, I've set that up so they have to roll to avoid shock even if they're dead. But actually, that wasn't true. It does check whether the enemy is alive before it makes them make that roll. So it turned out that, yeah, I had found a problem that didn't exist. But anyway, that's PC side attacks, and PC side attacks will send us usually to next action. Next action is where we have to have some code, because remember, the whole point of the spray attack is we get to attack more than once. And so, no, we don't want to go on to the next action. Once we've made one attack, we don't want to go on to the next action, at least not unless we've used up all the ammunition that we rolled when we rolled burst. So here's what we do. We set Z2 equal to 0. That is a temporary variable that's going to be set to 1 if we have any ammunition left, any burst ammunition left. And we have a new if, which is if burst is greater than 0. Well, two things happen. First of all, we have this wasting ammunition possibility, which is if random 0, 1 is equal to 1, in other words, just a straight 50% chance, then give the message that the spray attack wastes ammunition, reduce ammunition by 1, and reduce burst by 1. That's what minus minus means. It means reduce this value by 1. Plus plus is the opposite and means add 1 to it. So we waste ammunition 50% of the time, and if burst is still greater than 0, then we set Z2 to 1. And then, if Z2 is equal to 1, then we go to find burst target, where the computer will ask, are there any living targets left in that range band that we can have a go at? And if Z2 is not equal to 1, well, that means that either we're not making this special spray attack, or we are making this special spray attack, but we've finished. We've run out of ammunition. Burst is now set to 0. And if that's the case, we just do the stuff that we already were doing, which is we reduce actions, and then the next character acts, or this character has their other action. So it's a little bit complicated in the coding, but as you can see, when you play it, you don't get that complexity. You just get sort of the results, which is that you get multiple attacks and use up a lot of ammunition. So that is most of the special attacks. There is, I think, at least one left, which I'll be doing in the videos to come. But we sort of have our eyes on the finish line now, I think, at least, other than debugging, I suppose. But as far as this channel is concerned, because I don't think I'll be reporting on the debugging that I do, as far as this channel is concerned, we are at a point where I'll be doing a new project sort of fairly soon. But for now, I'll leave it there. I hope that was useful or interesting to at least some of you, and I hope you will tune in next time.